Good Wednesday to everybody. Paul Sinopiatis here from Strathclyde Engraving, starting another project for a good client and for a friend. Today what we're going to be doing is a lesson in thinking outside of the envelope. So let me begin to explain that and kind of show you what we have going on. This is a stainless steel 26650 battery tube. This is used commonly in vaping devices to hold the battery in place inside the vaping device, or mod as it's referred to. It's threaded top and bottom. This piece will actually be going into a mod or a vaping device that has a portion of the tube itself exposed for viewing, which makes it a perfect palette for what I actually do. So this is what a tube will start off looking like. So this is kind of like, this is how I'm going to receive it from the modder, from the individual who makes the vaping devices. And what I try to do is move from here through the entire process. So this is the first step, receiving the tube. Once the tube has been received and I've received an order from a potential client, then I begin to work on the tube. Now, this particular vaping device that I'm referring to is called an emir, and I have a small stencil that I use, which is basically a piece of acetate plastic that I have used to actually cover the entire open area on the tube. So what I do is I'll place that plastic stencil on the top here, and then what I will do is go back and outline it. You can still see some of the silver from the Sharpie, and I will outline it, and then I will cut into this tube. Now, this tube is stainless steel and it is anodized. Okay, so we're looking at what is referred to as a black tube. Actually, it's a little bit of a darker gray. So this is the first step in the process. I will actually place the stencil on the top to show me where my open area is actually going to be, and I will draw a line around it, and then I go back with a graver and actually cut myself an area so that I can see exactly where I'm going to be working on. So we've completed this. Now, in every other design that we've done, which most of them have been on mokume tubes, which is what you see here, gorgeous copper brass mokume, and needless to say, I've already got the outline cut on this. This is waiting for a customer. With a black tube, a problem starts. All of my stencils are black and white. They're printed on a laser jet printer. I print them on parchment paper, as I showed in video PCD01, where I showed how stencil application was done. Well, with this piece comes a problem. I'm not going to be able to see dead black lines on this as well as I should, especially when we're talking about an anodized tube where there's not going to be a lot of shading. The major contrast in engraving comes from doing a lighter colored metal and then using a dark enamel to actually go back and, accent the details that are there, actually bring the details out, show the shading. But on this mod, it's actually like a negative. When I cut the line in it, as you saw on the first piece, you can see that silver line really stands out and it catches the light. A lot of that has to do with how you sharpen your graver, as well as what type of graver you're using, in addition to how well polished the bottom of the graver is. So that's actually part of the process. So I had to think outside the envelope on this one and asked a few friends, asked around, kind of got a little bit of an idea, and lo and behold, this has been the result. What I'm using here is a matte Rust-Oleum in a spray can to actually spray over the top of this and give myself, what I need to work with. Looks like I've got a little ding right there. Hopefully that's not going to create any problems for me. It looks like I've got another little ding right there, but it's of no major consequence. The whole idea here was to give myself a lighter colored background on which to work. So I have just finished scanning the design in to my PC at 1200 dpi. So what are actually laptops? An Apple MacBook Pro is what I use because I find it's easier to use a MacBook Pro when it comes to artwork than it is a PC. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set this aside for the time being. This is, drying, and it's dry to the touch right now, which is exactly what I'm looking for. What I'm going to do is go back at this point, and I'll begin to work on readying the design up to be transferred to the top of this. And from here, it's basically the same step process that you saw in PMS01. What I will do is I will apply a layer of Damar varnish to the top of this, allow it to become tacky, and then apply the stencil and begin to do my cutting. Now, as I was saying, with an anodized tube, there's not going to be a whole lot of shading on this piece, simply because it's going to be a design in negative. So all of the design work, all of the line cutting that we're doing is going to stand out really, really well because of the contrast between the anodized portion of it, which is, like it's a darker gray, considered a black, and once that's done, those lines are really, really going to stand out. So I'm going to go on ahead and sneak away at this point and begin to do some work on my design so that I can size it and get it down to the size that I need to actually roll across the top of this and not sneak into under the edges of the piece that I'm working on. Now, just to let you know, the design that I have here on the front of this is actually 0.5 millimeter bigger in size than what is actually exposed on the tube, or on the vaping device or on the mod. So when I do a Celtic knot design with this, it's very cool in that it allows that design to kind of creep out from under the wood, and it creates an amazing effect. But this piece is a standalone in that it's not an overall Celtic knotwork design. It is a cross. It is inspired from a Black Sabbath design. The customer that I'm doing this for is a Black Sabbath fan and really want to make this look good for him. So I'm going to step away and I'm going to finish working with the design that I have, resizing it to fit on this piece, and we'll go from there. So give me a few minutes, folks, and I'll be back. So after much experimentation, and this truly turned out to be an experiment in stenciling for me, an exercise in stenciling. This is the piece after the stencil has been applied, as well as a fixative sprayed over the top. I'm using a flat black Rust-Oleum to provide the white background so that I can see the details that I need to be able to see in the tube. Now, tell you right now, this was not an easy process. It required a lot more work than I thought it was going to. Specifically, I went back and used like blue painter's tape to actually mask off the outside. So you can see like a couple of spots here and here and here where, there was actually, the masking tape actually was. I didn't want to spray the entire tube because the cleanup then is phenomenal. So I just masked off this area. Now, another one of the things that I found that when I did this, using this white Rust-Oleum, I could not use Damar varnish. When I put it on, the Damar varnish would actually thin the Rust-Oleum out and would leave me with, like spots where you could actually see through to the tube. So I wasn't able to get a good transfer there. And that naturally is of a major concern for me. So I think this is the 6th time that I have painted this and applied a stencil, and I think I finally perfected the methodology for doing this, or at least perfected it enough to where the next time that I do it, it won't be such a royal pain in the tush. The stencil, when I put it on the piece initially, just, without the Damar varnish, I noticed that the stencil immediately stuck to the paint. And that's what gave me the idea to just go on ahead and try to do this without using any Damar varnish to actually remove the stencil from the parchment paper and then get it onto the piece. So all in all, I think this stencil actually came out very, very good. All the lines are very clean. There are some things that I'm going to have to, take notice of while I'm engraving to try to achieve some smaller detail The customer that I'm doing this for wants some detail done in the face of the piece, so that's probably going to, add a little bit of time to my work. But, my thing is I want to please the customer. I want the customer to be as happy as possible with the work that I do. So right now I'm letting this dry, and once this is dry, I'll come back and begin the line cutting, and we will start filming again. So I'm going to take a quick lunch break, and considering it's like almost noon here, and I'm going to let this dry, let this fixative set up really, really well. The last thing that I want is to, be working on the piece and rub my finger across the top of it and then actually get some of the line off of it. That's the whole idea behind the fixative. So we're going to cross our fingers and hope that this works really, really well. And we'll be back in a few, and we'll start cutting on this piece. So I'm going to slip out, grab some lunch, eat some lunch, and then by the time I get back and get everything taken care of, we should be ready to start engraving. Alrighty, back from lunch, got the stencil applied, and we're going to go ahead and get started on this piece. So as always, I tend to work from one side to the other. So let me get my scope positioned and get myself zoomed in really well, focused up, and we will begin the process of taking care of this piece. Going to give it a little bit of a tilt, and we are good to go. So coming from the other side. Now, one of the things about using paint that is a bit of a pain is that it will peel up in front of your engraver, so you end up having to, kind of like keep a real close eye on things that are going on. I mean, needless to say, you're going to do that in any case, but still one of those things that you've got to be careful of. Alright, now what I'm going to do is I usually start away from a corner, and then engrave back into the corner. That way I can create a really sharp, nice looking corner. And for those of you who are curious, I'm using a GRS CMAX carbide graver to ensure that the piece works the way that I want it to work. I find that Glen steel, the GRS Glen steel gravers, are just a tad too soft for this 3/16 stainless that I get on most of these battery tubes. See where I'm at here. Go into a corner and pick out. That's the quickest and easiest way to get a good clean corner. so that's kind of what I have going on here. I'm going to go back. Into that corner and pick out. And now we've got to do these little scroll pieces. Pick out there, and then we're going to come back and we're going to do the same thing from this side, except we are actually going to come in from the opposite way, simply based on the way that I engrave. In other words, the hand that I use. And because these are separated, let me come around and clean this corner up a little bit. And that will work nicely. All right. And this is just, the nice thing about this piece is it will be, for the most part, all basic line work. There's not a whole lot of any kind of shading or anything along those lines that need to be done. Now, normally, when I am working on a piece, one of the things I try to do is, after I'm finished with it, I use steel wool. Steel wool ensures that you don't have any raised places on the engraving. That could snag clothing or a hand or anything along those lines. But sometimes, especially when you're doing just this, like the line work that I'm doing here, that's not something you can do, especially on an anodized tube. You've got to remember, when tubes are anodized, there's a thin oxide layer, okay? And that thin oxide layer is what actually, gives the tube its specific color, or whichever piece of metal that you're working on. That's part of the, kind of like the nature of the beast, I guess you could say, with this. Don't like the way that line looks. There we go. Pick out. Excellent. Right, I've got a little bit of a wave right there that I'm going to go back in and very quickly straighten out. There we go. That's perfect. And now we'll come back over and grab the inside of this line and move it up as well. I'm going to give this piece a little bit of a spin, not much, and that will allow me to get started on this side. Now, this was a stencil that was picked out by the customer. So, being that this is not something that I have drawn personally, I've had to make some basic alterations to the drawing. To prevent any type of copyright infringement or anything like that. That's something that an engraver has to be careful of, because, I mean, let's face it, folks, if somebody's going to work hard on a piece of artwork, the last thing they really want is someone coming and taking that artwork away from them and calling it their own. So in this particular piece, the changes that were made were to the interior of the design, so that there would be no issues. From the original piece that was done, this was a hand-drawn piece. This was not like laid out on a computer or anything like that, which can provide a much higher level of accuracy in the drawing. But the problem with that is that you lose some of the feel for the drawing. Keep moving here. Now, sometimes I'm engraving to the outside of the line, and sometimes I'm engraving to the inside of the line. So I can see what I'm doing there. Got a little bit of a glare there, and I need to get another little bit of focus, and I'm going to move my scope just a tad. Alright, let's get back on that line. There we go, perfect. Go ahead and walk that up to the edge very carefully. And there we go. Alright, so now we're going to continue to move down. I'm going to try to get this area of the cross done first. I'm going to go ahead and rotate this a little bit. I need it facing up just a wee bit more than it is. Starting away from the corner, going to the outside of the line. Excellent. All right. I'm going to come up, bring it up from the bottom. Gets to a point I can't see what I'm doing, I'm going to pick out, remove that metal and anything that's rolling up in front of it. Alright, hit the corner, So I'm going to come back in from the opposite direction and clean it up. And if I have to hit it a couple times, I mean, it's no big deal. Going back to the other side. Taking it out as far as I care to. And then I'm going to come back up from the bottom over here on this side, and we will work away from it. Now, there is a corner here, so I'm going to actually start a little bit away from the corner. And on we go. Nice clean corner. In it and pick out. Come in from the other side. Same deal. In it and pick out. Alright, so we are, let's see where we're at. What I'm going to do is try to get some of this knot, a little bit of this knot work done on the inside here. And we'll go from there. Now the knot work lines, because I've had to miniaturize this so much, they're not as clean as I would like them to be. So I've got to do my best at this point to try to clean those lines up, widen them up, do what needs to be done. Come in from this side and get the same thing. One of the things with Celtic knotwork that is sometimes really, really difficult to achieve, and this is just my personal thing, if they're too perfect, they just don't look right. I mean, I've been drawing Celtic knots and scales for years. And you know, I've sat down and I've done pieces with protractors and compasses and rulers, and you know, it's too perfect. It just does not look the way that I would like it to look. So for that reason, I tend to stay away from perfect lines. Now, when it comes to a straight line, that's a different story. I try to keep those as solid and as straight as I possibly can. But on these lines, I tend to, it's not a matter of okay. I'm going to come back around from this side. Meet that line there in the corner, and there is a little bit of a point to that there. Nice and clean. Alright, we're going to come back in to the other side of it and bring out the other side of the line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from up here. Give myself a little bit of a point there. Now I can come back down here from this side. Meet that point, pick out, and go to town. Alright, let's make that corner a little bit cleaner. Done. And let's terminate this line. Another one of the things that makes stainless steel a little bit of a challenge is the geometry that you have to use on your graver. I've found that at a 45-degree face angle on your graver, for those of you who do engraving, I've found that 45-degree face angle does more to promote the tip breaking off than it does doing me any good, which is kind of a pain. So what I end up doing is I have to go with a face angle that's actually much higher, more obtuse. So as opposed to a 45-degree angle on the face, I've actually got a 50-degree angle on my face. With a 17-degree heel, as opposed to the more standard and traditional 15-degree heel. So what makes it, another thing that makes it challenging is that with this face angle so obtuse, it's sometimes kind of difficult to see exactly where the point of your graver is, and it becomes almost a matter of feel. And if you're not going slow and you're not watching what you're doing, even that feel methodology will leave you in a bind. Thankfully, I feel like I've got enough of a handle on it to be able to see it. Now, a lot of times you'll see me brush the graver up against my thumb like this. What I'm actually doing is brushing any debris off the tip of the graver that may be left from, the line that I've just cut, or any of the stencil that may try to stick to things. All I'm doing is just removing that. All right, we've got a line we need to terminate here. And that's one of those things that, trust me, you want to go slow with so you can terminate the thing where you want to terminate it. I would rather pick up and out short of my goal, which will allow me to go back and actually, okay, I know I need to go a little bit farther, kind of thing. So it's more or less just a continuation of one area after another, being very careful. I'm almost getting to a point here where I'm thinking about getting my graver on my sharpener. See, I can take this side in a little bit farther. And I can get in this one and cut corner to corner. Let me clean that corner up now. The reason it's difficult to see your lines with an obtuse face angle is because you have a lot of metal up here on the very face of the graver. That's the face is this little flat part at the very, very tip. Your cutting edge is right here down at the bottom, and the heel, which is what the graver rides on while it's cutting, is actually underneath. When that face is really, really big, sometimes it makes it difficult to actually see your line. So a lot of times what people will do is shape them down, much like you see the angular tip on mine. I could probably grind the top down at a sharper angle. I have a 10-degree angle on the top, I could probably grind that down and do a little bit better with it than what I have, but haven't really, at this point, haven't really taken the time to do it. I find that if a graver is cutting well, I'm kind of loath to actually go in and do anything that will change the geometry or change the cutting face of the piece, because stainless is a difficult metal to cut, especially this 316. I'm lucky in that this is a little bit more machinable than most metals. Most types of stainless steel. I think this has a machinability rating of about 45%. But even at that, there are times that this is just wow to cut. I can take that down just a little bit more. Right there, stop. Alright. Alright. I'm going to take this side in a little bit more. Perfect. And now I'll come and create the end cut, showing the end of that banner. Perfection. Get back in that corner and clean it up. We've got it. Alright, and then I'm going to do the same up here. I think I'm going to come from the outside here to get that cut. How do you know when you've reached the other corner, the other side? It's a feel thing. It's really kind of a feel thing. And of course, you're watching what you're doing under a scope, so needless to say, that makes a difference as well. There we go. Alright, let's keep moving here. Right. Perfect. Let's get in and grab the other side. Whoa. And before I cut that corner there, what I want to do is I want to get this outside line. A little too much metal, I can't see what I'm doing. Now I'm going to come back on the other side, set my graver tip, and yeah, if you're wondering, I've got I'm sitting on, my bench is on like a Persian rug, an older Persian rug that I've had for years. And yeah, there are lots of nice little pieces of metal all over it from when I have been doing this cutting. I'm sure my vacuum cleaner thanks me every time I do this. Alright, let's terminate this line here. Now, with this, again, I have to continually rotate the piece so that the area that I'm working is like right on top, because working away from the center of the tube, the curve, it really creates issues. You set yourself up to slip, and there is nothing worse than putting all this time into a piece and then one small slip destroying the entire piece. I mean, and it'll do it too. I mean, if it's a minor slip or something like that, that's usually, not too bad to take care of. But if you're talking about something, like major, best of luck. And there's nothing more frustrating than getting like 3/4 of the way through a piece, and then because you're in a rush, because you're not watching what you're doing, because of this, that, or the other, you take less than the time that you need to get something done. Now, another quick way for people who are watching, another quick way to actually sharpen a graver, or to at least, kind of like a straight razor, like you'd use a razor strop on it. That's basically what I've got here. It's a piece of leather, and on this leather I have sprayed a nano-sized diamonds in a spray medium. So I can drag the tip of the graver across this, and the diamonds that are actually embedded in the leather from the spray, once it's dry, it almost acts like a sharpening agent as well. So it makes a little bit of a difference. It helps out. Smooth cut like those. Clean corners. Let's go back up. I'm going to have to rotate this back towards me just a hair so that I can get in here and get this little line taken care of. There we go. Alright, I've got the end there. So let's move on to another piece of the puzzle. Rotate it a little farther forward. And we will begin to work on some of these other areas. I've got a line that actually needs to go up and over, starting from down here. This line actually connects here. And this is where I create the corner for that line that I just started a while back. Slowly but steadily. And if you rush through a piece, folks, trust me, it's going to look rushed. Don't rush your work. Do not rush your work. It's not worth what's going to happen. It's not worth the way that your piece is going to come out looking. It's just not worth it. Trust me. Alright, so we're going to have to adjust this line a little bit to make it match its surroundings, which is of no mean consequence. And this is something, you end up doing on the fly. It's not anything to freak about. There we go. I need to bring this side in just a hair more. And now I've got corners that I can make right there. Engraving is, for a fact, a time-consuming and laborious process. It is the nature of the art form. And there's very little that you can do to change it. Now, I mean, you do eventually get a little faster over a period of time. You become more confident with your line work. You become more confident with your engraver gliding over the top of the metal. I mean, there's a lot of things that, that change over a period of time. So that's just kind of the nature of it. So if you're just starting out, my advice to you is simple. Take your time. Don't rush it. If you rush it, it's going to look rushed. It's going to look like you rushed it. So here's another thing that most people don't consider when you do engraving. Whether it's custom artwork or not, I'm going to grab a vape here while I'm talking, so give me a second. All right. So, in terms of the artwork, this piece that you see stenciled on started off the size of a US letter, okay? Just regular printer paper letter size. That's about how big this thing was. And what I've done is basically miniaturize the piece. So on something that's, let's say, 8 by 10, I'm going to roll the tube just a little bit here, guys. Give me a minute. So when you start off with something that's 8 by 10, and then you reduce it in size to something that's no wider from tip of the cross to tip of the cross here, 37 millimeters, you get an idea of what really begins to happen with some of these pieces. When you have a lot of detail and you miniaturize it, you reduce it in size, the detail stays there, but it just turns into a black mass. It's kind of like early tattooing. You've seen some of those. You've seen some of the older gentlemen who have tattoos on their arms, and I would say these are guys who have spent time, and we don't have too many of them left, World War II, who've gotten tattoos overseas. Well, when they got the tattoo, you know, they were using, like, for a liner, they were using like a 7 needles in a round configuration. Well, over a period of time, your skin grows and expands. So all of a sudden, what was once a clean line is now this huge black mass. Well, let's reverse that and take a bunch of detail and reduce it in size to something really, really small, and you've got an idea of what I'm talking about as far as how frustrating the artwork itself can be sometimes. You end up dealing with a ton of, I'm not going to say guesswork, because I have a copy of this picture on my MacBook Pro to the left of me. I can avert my eyes from my scope for just a moment, and I can look over and see the piece itself. This up, and it don't take much, just a quick in and out of that corner and you're done. Everything's nice and smooth. Okay, now I can see right here I've got part of that line, but it bleeds onto his hand. So I'm going to start cutting. I want to go from a thin line here. Because I don't want to get onto any of that area that I'm going to need for his hand. I'll probably end up using a smaller graver. And when I say smaller graver, I'm talking about the angle of the graver. I'm using a 120-degree graver. What that means, imagine a V in your mind, a capital letter V. From the point to the top, okay, there where the two legs of the V open up. The farther apart you spread those legs, the wider the angle is. So the most commonly used, or at least what I have on my bench, is a 90-degree, a 105, and a 120. I also use a flat and a half round bottom graver. But for when it comes to cutting these lines, depending on what I am cutting, I tend to swap my gravers up. The reason I do this is because I know what each graver is capable of line-wise, if you follow my drift. Come on, get out of there. There we go. Sometimes those little stainless steel metal pieces want to stay. And you really shouldn't brush it off with your finger, because trust me, that stuff gets sharp. I've cut myself a couple of times. Go back in and clean it up from the opposite direction. Perfect. And now we're going to do the same for up here. Spin it, come back, and then clean the other side of this up. Done. Alright, now I see how that line, the initial outline of it, comes in from here. Stop right there so I can see what I'm doing, because I want those two lines to meet, which they did. That's that part of that feel thing that I was telling you about. All right, let's go on ahead. We're going to get the bottom of this line cut. Perfect. Go on ahead and terminate that line. And now we're going to flip it around. We're going to come to the other side. And we're going to clean that corner up nicely. And I've got one line here that I need to terminate. I want to bring the edges of this cut piece right here just a little bit closer to that line, which is great. I've got it right there. And now I can come back in. And we should be good to go. Clean that corner up. Always come back in, clean your corners up. Because as soon as you don't, guess what? It's going to stand out real big. All right, now, there's another piece that I see here that is actually a part of this design. And I'm trying to figure out how I would like to do this. So what I'm going to do, start here. And very good. We'll come back in over here on the other side. And I'm just going to drop that off right there. I'm also going to go ahead and terminate this line. I can bring this in just a hair closer to the hand. There we go, that's better. This way I can come in and get a clean kind of termination on this line, part of this Celtic knotwork that's in the corner, and it will look much better. All right. Corner's clean. Come back in, clean it up. Come back in from this side. Clean it up a little bit, and I want to come back in from this side, I believe. Yeah. Perfect. And that is kind of how this is done, folks. I mean, I finished up one small area of it for you to see. And what I'm going to do is go on ahead and, end the video here so that I don't get too lengthy. But this is the entire process. What you're seeing here is what's going to be done across the entire piece. I will probably come back and do another video once I start cutting on the center portion of the piece, which is the Black Sabbath angel here at the front. So, guys, I appreciate you joining me. Thank you very much. I always love to have you guys company, and I really love being able to share this with you and let you see how my craft is done, especially if you're the person who's purchasing this piece. So, to my client, who I hope is watching, brother, I think this is going to turn out amazingly well. I think you're going to be very, very surprised at the outcome. And I feel that once it's done, it's going to have a good bit of visual impact. So this is where I'm going to sign off. Paulson and Piatta, Strathclyde Engraving. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Remember, please subscribe and like. Watch a few videos. Take the time just to kind of get a feel for the craft and how it works. And I look forward to our next video session. Take care, all. Bye-bye.